So what is consumer surplus in equilibrium when supply is represented by the supply curve and demand is D1? So we have supply curve, we have two demand curves. The first question is, what is consumer surplus when demand is D1? D1 is that one, right? So we know consumer surplus is below the demand curve, above the price. So with the D1 demand curve, consumer surplus would basically be the area of this triangle, right? So the area is, it's a right triangle, just multiply the size, divide by 2. The first one we know, this is the quantity in equilibrium, and that's 7. And this is difference between intercept and price in equilibrium, that is 14. So the consumer surplus would be 14 times 7 divided by 2, or 49. And that would be B. Okay. So again, supply is, there's a supply curve. And demand is represented by D1. If the figure represents the market for books and paper becomes more expensive, what can we expect to happen to the equilibrium quantity? Okay, so we're in this world of supply and demand. What happens when the price of paper is increasing? What would change? Demand or supply? This is the market for books. Supply, right? Because now it's more expensive. The input prices are going up. So basically, at any quantity, the supply curve is going to be higher than before, right? Because the cost of producing that good is going to be higher. So we're going to shift the supply curve up, or shift the supply curve to the left. And you can do that, right? It doesn't really matter. What's going to be, the question is what's going to happen to the equilibrium quantity? And what can we say about it? It's going to decrease, right? So it's not going to be greater than 7. 7 was the original one. It's not going to be exactly 7. It is going to be less than 7 for sure. All right, so this is C. All right, fill in the blanks. If the government imposes a tax of $4, deadweight costs will be greater under which curve rather than the other? And tax incidence on buyers will be larger under, again, which curve? So let's look at the first one. When there is a tax, right? If the total surplus is the area of this triangle or this triangle, then the tax is basically putting a pressure on the quantity in this market. So the quantity would be lower, which is going to decrease total surplus, right? So a tax of $4 might be somewhere here, right? And that will be $4. And what will be the deadweight loss? How do we measure that? It's the area of this triangle here, right? Because let's say we're in D1's world. This was total surplus before the tax. Now the tax is imposed here. Total surplus becomes, well, right, total surplus becomes that area here of that trapezoid, and this is deadweight loss. So the question is, for the same tax, given the tax, right, would deadweight loss be higher under D1 or D2?
D2.
Why is that? Alright, think of this logically. What is the area of this triangle? Well, it's the amount of the tax, right, times the decrease in quantity in this market, right? So this is original quantity. This is going to be the quantity after the tax, whatever that is. This is the other. This is the height, right? If tax is the base, the height of this triangle would be the change in quantity. So for the same tax, use a different color. So the difference between the supply and demand curve is going to be 4. And 4 is here. Right? 4 is there for D2. So tax is the same. The decrease in quantity, is it higher under D1 or under D2? D2. Sorry, no, the decrease in quantity is higher under D1. So the deadweight loss would be higher under D1. Right, do you see that? Basically the area of this triangle is higher than the area of that triangle. And this is because D1 is more or less elastic than D2. Is D1 more elastic or less elastic?
D1 is more elastic.
It's more elastic, right? The fatter it is, the more elastic it is. So because of that, the change in quantity is going to be larger under D1 than D2, and deadweight loss would be also greater. So deadweight loss would be greater under D1 rather than D2, right? And tax incidence on buyers, would it be greater under D1 or D2? Well, tax incidence on buyers, we say we can calculate as the ratio of this over that, right? Pretty much that the side, this side over the total. So even if you just do the math, right, you can figure that out. This is 14, this is 21. So one of them is 14 over 21. The other one is that intersection here. What is that? Intercept is 32 minus 11, right? That's 22. Sorry, 21. And the whole thing is 28. Which fraction is higher? I mean, think of this, right? This is the fraction of this over that. This is the fraction of this whole thing over that. D2 is higher, right? The tax incidence when the demand curve is less elastic is higher for buyers. Right. You can also see that. You see it here, right? Your tax incidence on buyers would be that over that, and tax incidence on buyers would be this whole side over that whole side. So the fraction here is much smaller than the fraction there. Right. So the second one, tax incidence on buyers will be larger on the D2, right, rather than D1. So the correct answer would be A, right? D1, D2, D2, D1.